The LMC casts a wide net over the Sound Shore to bring you local event info, profiles, and conversations. Recorded in the heart of the village in Mamaroneck Cinemas at the studio on the Avenue, LMC Media brings you the LMC Cast Community Profiles.
Hi, my name is Mike Reynolds. I'm a longtime Mamaroneck resident. On this episode of LMC Cast Community Profile, we're going to talk about affordable housing through the lenses of the research of 4 Mamaroneck High School students. If any of you have attended any of the Village of Mamaroneck board meetings or watched them on LMC Media, you know affordable housing is a controversial topic. What's been happening here is the debate has largely centered around the Hunter Tier lot, which is across the street from the Village Hall and the police station. There's been lots of back and forth. West Ham and Luna have put in bids for this. There's been all kinds of points of contention raised around who might get to live there, the size of the apartment building they want to erect, the pricing, the financial ramifications, whether it would be very deleterious towards traffic, overcrowding in the schools, many other considerations, including potential lawsuits. So, as it stands, 3 Village of Mamaroneck board members have advocated for and voted to approve West Ham as the preferred vendor for the Hunter Tier lot. Mayor Sharon Torres is proposing something bigger. It's a combination of public and private interest that would not only encompass the Hunter Tier lot, but the old Village Hall, as well as the empty fire station on Mamaroneck Avenue. She's looking to not only worry about affordable housing, but increase parking and the like. So at this juncture, it's against this backdrop that we're going to gain some insights about the broader and historical dynamics of affordable housing, as well as its place in Metro New York and in Larchmont and Mamaroneck. We've got 4 MHS students. They have teamed on what is called Original Civic Research and Action Project, or OCRA, about affordable housing. I was hoping you guys could introduce yourself.
I'm Alex.
Okay.
I'm Anna.
Tyler.
And I'm Hannah.
Okay. Hannah, can you tell us a little bit about OCRA? What is the program about?
So Original Civic Research and Action is a 4-year program. It starts freshman year and you're going in once or twice a week before school for an hour and just kind of learning a bit about the history of Larchmont, the history of Mamaroneck, etc. And then going into sophomore year, you begin to kind of focus in on local issues and find what issues interest you. By halfway through sophomore year, you select one issue, you get together with a group based on common interests, and then you start a 2.5-year project. For us, that project was around increasing access to affordable housing.
Okay. Tyler, how many other projects are going on under the OCRA auspices?
Probably, I know for our grade, it's like 7 or 8, so probably maybe twice that many over all the grades.
So you guys are all seniors, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anna, can you give us a sense for why you guys all gravitated toward affordable housing?
Well, I think for me, it started by talking to a lot of our teachers and faculty members around the school about them sharing their love for the community, but then talking about how they couldn't afford to live here, even though it's a community that they serve. And so for us, that was one of the reasons. And then another reason is that there is an opportunity divide between a lot of the elementary schools, and we feel that there are resources that are lacked. And I think that generalizing housing and allowing everyone to have access to affordable housing can really make a difference in those elementary schools, and just help people stay in the community who make a big impact in it.
All right. Alex, can you please set the table for us? You guys have done a lot of research. This is multifaceted. There's lots of figures. Be kind to those who are not as smart.
Yeah, so since sophomore year, our major focus of our research project has been focusing on specifically a tool of affordable housing known as inclusionary zoning. And what inclusionary zoning is, and we'll explain bits of it in more detail in case studies later on, is that a municipal government, especially in a state like New York, where zoning and land use is dictated not by the county, not by the state, but by the local municipalities, and says if you are building housing here, we want to delegate what's known as a set-aside, a specific portion of that housing. It can be a percentage of the units, it can be square footage, to that, to affordable housing. Another thing which we'll discuss later with AMI and percentages is kind of the buzzword of affordability. And that so many times we may hear that word and negative connotations can often come into our heads, but when you're looking at a community like Larchmont or Mamaroneck, it is relative affordability. So even if you are able to meet the requirements for an affordable unit here, that would look very different in a city or in upstate. And inclusionary zoning is municipality specific, so it basically looks at, okay, we have these new developments, or we have this land, or we just have a desire for people to live here and experience a beautiful community. How can we make that more accessible?
Okay. Tyler, if you could continue a little bit more on the inclusionary zoning front, can you give us some of the whys and wherefores that Alex hasn't already addressed?
So I think inclusionary zoning is an interesting tool because it's about harnessing private sector development that already happens and using that tool to enhance affordability. So what somebody does with their private property is, for the most part, up to them. Obviously, they have to follow things like zoning regulations, other things that are set out by local municipalities, but for the most part, it's they own the land, so they get to do with it as they please. If somebody has a parcel of land and they want to develop it, as long as it meets the zoning code, people in a municipality, municipal government can't really dictate what they can or can't do as long as it meets the zoning requirements. So inclusionary zoning is a way of harnessing private sector development that would probably naturally already happen and making it more affordable by saying, if you're building, say, 80 apartments, 10% of them, 8 of them have to be affordable housing with capital A, capital H. So specifically, you mandate that it has to be someone who's below this or meets this income level, and it'll rise as the area median income rises, so it's not like permanently set somewhere, but it's a way of kind of making sure that private developments reflect that aspect of affordability, and to do that without really requiring the local municipality to actually do any building or pick a site or any of that, because it's entirely private sector development is already happening.
Okay. All right. We've talked inclusionary. Hannah, what about exclusionary zoning?
So inclusionary zoning is really a response to exclusionary zoning, which came first. And we really see the first exclusionary zoning policies emerge post-Reconstruction. So in the early 1900s, the first real example is in Annapolis, Maryland, and like a black lawyer was trying to move to a primarily white neighborhood, and like the homeowners association was essentially like, no, that's not happening. And then they later instated a more official policy. So initially, a lot of these exclusionary zoning policies were targeted at different racial demographics. Now, as we move forward past like Fair Housing Act, stuff like that, you can no longer discriminate on like the basis of race. But what happens a lot of the time is that housing is separated on a basis of wealth. You'll see even here, like you go to the Manor or Orienta, obviously single family homes, very nice houses, other parts, apartment buildings, etc. So basically, exclusionary zoning policies only allow for one type of housing in a specified area, and this is detrimental to diversity, diversity, resources, so on. So that's really how exclusionary zoning started. Yeah, that's really it.
Okay, all right. Alex, you mentioned AMI. I'm going to put the money in your court, Anna. Tell us about AMI.
Yeah, so building off what Alex started, AMI, or Area Median Income, is a tool used to pair community members with affordable housing opportunities. But I think that in our research, something that we've used AMI as is really a way to change the narrative of affordable housing. And so talking about 60% AMI, or the people that teach your children and teachers in our community, and fire, fire officials and police officers. So I think that recontextualizing affordable housing and talking about it in the sense of not just a number designated by AMI or a certain income, and really contextualizing it in the sense of the people who are going to be living in these apartments and the people who these affordable housing developments will help, and the effects that they have on the community. So.
Okay, all right. Alex, we'll talk a little bit now about land use and zoning. These are key elements to the affordability housing questions.
Yeah, so just to kind of be a bit more specific than what Anna mentioned, AMI specifically will take the average income of a municipality or a county, and go, okay, so for Mamaroneck, it's this number. That means if your unit is 80%, you cannot exceed, a household cannot exceed 80%. And this changes whether you're one-person household, four-person household, and will scale accordingly. Land use and zoning are obviously very hot topic issues anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, really. It's important to note that they are two very different things. Land use is self-explanatory. It's literally what you do with the land. Here, this is a commercial district. We have shops, we have houses, and it's all together in this mixed-use zoning. However, zoning then will then be specifically dictated in New York State by a municipality, the specific restrictions. So, for example, here we can build a media studio, we can build Mamaroneck cinemas, you can build a restaurant in a all-residential area that's dictated. Most likely it is by, obviously it'll be single family and the most square footage you can have. And by that, you can't build commercial or mixed use.
Okay. All right, I'm going to try to get a little bit more specific now with you guys, looking at the town of Mamaroneck, the village of Mamaroneck, and village of Larchmont. Personally, I still don't quite get all the geographic boundaries for that or the administrations. But anyway, Hannah, can you get us started with the zoning makeup for the town of Mamaroneck?
Yeah, so the unincorporated town is everything that you think of as like the Larchmont Mamaroneck community outside of the village of Mamaroneck and the village of Larchmont. The town has a decent amount of affordable housing compared to other Westchester municipalities. Something interesting to note is they were actually the first municipality to like establish a homeowners an affordable housing like action council, and also an affordable housing agency in the Sound Shore. And that really started with the Hommocks Park Apartments.
Okay.
In the 1990s, the Hommocks Park Apartments converted it was formerly a displaced persons shelter, and it made affordable housing units that again are based on AMI, like every single year or every 2 years. The building's management goes through each unit, examines how much each residents are making via tax returns, employment, etc., and then through that is able to determine whether or not they're able to remain in the unit, and that's to ensure that the affordable housing is serving those who it intends to serve.
Right.
Other parts of a lot of the village or the town of Mamaroneck is just these single family homes. You think of areas along the Leatherstocking Trail, back by Bonnie Briar. I'm trying to think of just examples. Like overall, the zoning landscape in the town of Mamaroneck is not as particularly diverse. One place where there's significant room for growth is along Boston Post Road, kind of in between Hommocks and the high school. That's a very commercial area. It's a lot of single-story buildings. There's a lot of potential to build on top of that, and in doing so, develop more affordable housing.
Okay. Alex, you're on the VOM beat here, Village of Mamaroneck.
Village of Mamaroneck. So what you're going to see with the Village of Mamaroneck is the C1 and C2 districts. So that basically goes from right above the harbor, right through we are now, and we'll go kind of continuing towards the highway up Mamaroneck Avenue. These are the only districts in the Village of Mamaroneck that has an inclusionary zoning policy and therefore has mandated affordable housing. Obviously, we are now in the very contentious Hunter lot plays a part into that. And I know a lot of, as kind of Hannah mentioned, and we've touched on a lot, other than that, primarily it is single-family housing. Although you will see a lot more here with kind of mixed use than you might in the others because of the strip we have here, or in communion with religious buildings and religious sites. And also another important thing to note on Hunter specifically is that for any municipality considering an affordable development, it is equally important to make sure that their legislation is prepared to keep that affordable as well. And that if you have something, you gotta make sure you maintain it and do it properly.
I got you. All right. Tyler, you're, what about the Village of Larchmont?
Yeah, so the Village of Larchmont, currently the IZ, because all 3 municipalities actually have adopted inclusionary zoning, most of them after a lawsuit from the federal government basically forced them to. They're called the Fair and Affordable Housing Ordinances. Larchmont has 10% must be set aside above, I think it's like 10 or 11 units. at 60% AMI. Similar for the other municipalities, I think it's 10% at 80%.
Okay.
But the primary thing that Larchmont has is there was an area that used to be a van depot, actually kind of near the train tracks right off Palmer Avenue, called near Pinebrook Park, called the Pinebrook Condominiums now.
Okay, yep.
It was originally going to be a luxury developer. There were a couple developers, I think, that picked it up and tried to push it through, but eventually kind of fizzled out. But then they were able to get, I think, some federal money, other forms of money, after the lawsuit where Westchester County had to build a certain number of units, and Pinebrook was one of those, and they were able to build, I think, just over 50 units of affordable housing there. And so that's been quite successful. Other than that, for all the municipalities, pretty much just a few units here and there because of things like IZ. So for example, when they did the Centro development on Chatsworth Avenue in downtown Larchmont, there was 1 unit set aside.
Really?
Because that was like what the 10% was out of, I think it was 14 units.
Okay.
So there
So
wouldn't have been a
sprinkled
unit.
throughout a bit.
Yeah,
Right?
but the problem kind of is that unless you have like a certain quantity, inclusionary zoning can only do so much. And if you're only producing 2 or 3 units,
Right.
it's better than nothing. But
Okay. All right. Anna, can you give us a peek at IZ, like, again, in the state, on the state level?
Yeah, well, talking about a lot of state-level case studies, IZ can really be traced back to the 1970s in Montgomery County, Maryland, when Montgomery County mandated units over 50, buildings with over 50 units, to have a set-aside percentage, so that could range from 12 to 15%. And we can see a lot of these affordable housing trends in other states. So with Connecticut's 40R, which mandates a lot of municipalities to create affordable housing plans and take action for that. And they are reciprocated by density bonuses. This is also seen in New Jersey with the Mount Laurel Doctrine. And yeah, it's pretty much it for the state.
Okay. All right. Tyler is going to ask you about some municipal case studies, I guess, for
Yeah.
IZ.
so specific municipalities, there are a number that have adopted IZ over the years. I think New York is probably the most prominent example, even though it's not completely innocuous. But like I said, because of the consent decree, almost all the municipalities in Westchester County had to adopt inclusionary zoning. There's a lot of flexibility, so they can expand it. They can say the AMI can be lower. They can say set aside, you have to set aside more units. That's something I think some municipalities here have actually been looking at recently. Other municipalities also affect the duration of how long it is, so the standard time period is usually 30 or 50 years, sorry.
So these things really got started, you mentioned, Anna, in the 70s. Is that kind of the time frame? This is 50 years in now?
That was kind of like a preview, but
Okay.
specifically in Westchester County, and I don't want to do like a whole history lesson, but like back in 05, I think, the county got hit by a federal lawsuit
Okay.
because the county was, when they were applying for federal grants, saying that they were more integrated than they were, had more affordable housing, so the federal government sued them, and a judge ruled that they had to build X number of affordable housing units and also get all the municipalities to implement these set-aside IZs. So almost all the IZ programs, there are a few that predate it. Mamaroneck might actually be one of those examples, not entirely sure, but most municipalities have adopted IZ since then because of stuff like the consent decree. But in terms of like specific case studies, I think the best examples of affordable housing that have happened, like Pinebrook, like she mentioned, the Larchmont Motel that got turned into affordable housing, and also the Mamaroneck Towers over there. Those are like the 3 most prominent examples.
Okay. Okay. Hannah, can you bring us a little bit closer? Tyler just mentioned some local stuff, but New York, in Westchester County, what else are we looking at?
Yeah, so something unique about New York State is that they have home rule, which means like the statewide programs like in New Jersey and Maryland wouldn't work in New York because municipals have that power to dictate zoning. But
In those states, it's statewide?
yeah,
Okay.
like the state Supreme Court and the state Constitution have zoning regulations in their legislation.
Okay.
In New York, that wouldn't work. But despite that, a lot of municipalities in Westchester have adopted affordable inclusionary zoning policies. For example, Bedford, New York, has an inclusionary zoning policy in a specific elderly district, and this elderly district isn't like defined through legislation. It's just a neighborhood in the community where a lot of elderly people live. Elderly people tend to rely on affordable housing more. So basically in this area, they said for like every blank amount of units built, there's I think it might even be up to 20% set aside for affordable housing. And they converted a lot of single family houses and units into a multifamily development. So on the outside, it looks like a single family community, and then these houses are actually 3, 4, 5, up to 7 units.
Interesting. All right, we're getting toward the end here a little bit. Anna, can you bring us home? What are your group's findings here on affordable housing? Or you guys are still working on this? It's an evolving thing, but what can you tell us now?
I mean, there's so much to learn about the affordable housing market, but something that we've learned about inclusionary zoning is that it can be used as a tool in a toolbox of ways that you can bring affordability to communities. So something that you can learn from Hunter Tier is that it's very important the process that you take in approaching these developments, because you have to answer a lot of questions way before they even come up, and that can really increase efficiency. And I think that everyone can learn from that. I think that Alex can expand about inclusionary zoning as a toolbox in the context of.
I think also just education is, from our research, has shown that it needs to be a lot, I think, larger community-wide. I think similar that kind of we've touched on throughout is that housing, whether you attach the word affordable to it in general, is often scary. We like our communities. We want to keep them the way they are. That's just a
That's human nature.
That's human nature. But I think what we found, especially with inclusionary zoning, is that affordable housing doesn't have to take away anything. In fact, it adds. As we've seen, very rarely it is a few units at a time for a community like Larchwood or
Right,
Merrimack.
sure.
And the best thing about it, to build on what Anna said, is that it is a toolbox, and that if you're what we're working on right now, which is the literature review of inclusionary zoning, so basically this is what exists, this is what we want to do, and then figuring out municipality specific how can we benefit these existing IZ programs, is that for a municipality to have a successful affordable housing program, there needs to be a wide range of tools used, and make sure to keep the community affordable and allow more people to come in and benefit from municipalities that we are fortunate to live in.
I just think another really important part is that our community as a whole is such a desirable place to live, and that there's just a strong want to break into this housing market, and that's something that can really be used in the creation of affordable housing, because we have more room to create more inclusionary zoning units, to require more set-aside units, because there's just such a high demand to build and to live in our community. So I think that we have an opportunity to do something really cool that a lot of other places with lower demand don't really have.
Inclusionary zoning thrives on a strong market, and Mamaroneck, Larchmont, they have an extremely strong market.
Tyler, last word to you.
I'd say that affordable housing can kind of be a scary thing, but I think it's important that we approach it holistically. So I think you started talking about Hunter Tier. Hunter Tier is just one part of that. Our OCRA group is a mission is to increase access to affordable housing. There are a lot of ways you can do that, a lot of tools you can use. So even if you don't necessarily agree with somebody on a specific way of going about approaching or dealing with affordable housing, it's important to still have conversations with the other side, agree that affordable housing as a goal is a desirable thing, a thing that we need, and then work on ways that we can get more affordable housing, or make the affordable housing that we have more durable, without, in ways that, like, you're never going to accommodate everyone. People are always going to have to make some sacrifices for others' sakes, but in ways that are civil, so that we can agree, even if we don't agree on one specific thing, agree that we should pursue more affordable housing. I think that's the only way to get things done, is through working together, because at the end of the day, like, it's one community. When a small part of it suffers, we all suffers. And I think everyone agrees that they want to make this beautiful place we live as great as we can.
All right. There you have it. You four have given us a lot to think about, digest, and process. Also wanted to apologize because you got stuck with me doing this. That I hope it doesn't hurt your grades with your OCRA instructors. But again, I just wanted to thank all of you for joining us. it's been very insightful, and we do appreciate it very much.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you so
you.
much.
Okay, that wraps this edition of Larchmont Cass Community Profile. I'm Mike Reynolds. We'll listen and see you next time. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the LMC Cast Community Profiles, produced at LMC Media's studio on the Avenue. Visit lmcmedia.org to book your time in this state-of-the-art convenient location, walkable from the Metro North train station on Mamaroneck Avenue. You can also support this nonprofit media center at lmcmedia.org/donate.